You called me over here. So I'm going to take you to get some help today. And I'm not leaving until you go. Okay?
Well, I hope you brought your nightie. 'Cause I'm not going anywhere.
There was a big mistake that I made early on in my career, and that was not talking about my race or identity in my work. As a multiracial filmmaker who looks black-ish, kinda, I have felt the pressure to discuss my race in my work. Today I want to talk about the pressures and expectations when you're put into a box, how to break out of that box, and how to talk about your race, ethnicity, identity, and overall just your personal story in a more authentic way. Now, this story begins in the country of Denmark. Small Scandinavian country, 5 million people, and this is the place that I call home from the ages of 13 to 18. It's where I got to experience things like universal health care and a social safety net, and also where I got to escape thinking about race and identity for a little bit. In America, one of the questions you get, especially when you're mixed, is, what are you? They want to know which racial category do I fit in so they know how to talk to me. However, in Denmark, this was a little bit different. When somebody would ask me where I was from, I would respond the same way. I would say my mom is black and my dad is white. And they would look at me very confused. They kind of had a frame of reference for it, but the white was assumed to be Danish and the black was a question mark. I would get questions like, is your mom African? Is she from Nigeria? When I would say I was an American, then everything just started to make sense. That was the context and the framework that a Danish person needed. And when I would answer that I was an American, I would get all sorts of interesting questions like, do you guys shoot each other? Yes. Do you guys drive cars everywhere? Yes. Do Americans just eat hamburgers and hot dogs? Do you know how to eat with a knife and a fork? And that is actually a real question. The answer is no, no, and yes, sometimes. And the final question would usually be, do you guys shoot each other while you're driving your cars around? Which kind of, not so much anymore, but we may go back to that soon. So in the years that I lived in Denmark, I stopped being a multiracial kid and I just became an American. And so I had to reframe the context in which I thought about myself. For the first time, living outside of the country that I was born in, I actually felt that that was my home. Denmark is not some kind of utopia. There is a lot of xenophobia. If you have brown skin, you are automatically assumed to be a foreigner. So when they're asking where you're from, they want to know which country that you're from because it's a country that they think has a good culture, like America, or maybe it's a country that they think has a bad culture, like Africa, Pakistan, Turkey, which, when you put it in that framework that you're categorizing brown people, means it's racist. But getting away from the idea that I had to formulate the specific racial category that I was from, for me, was a very welcome escape. So let's fast forward to back in America, 19 years old, going to film school. The pressure starts to come back to put myself back into that racial category. Teachers and other people would assume that I was going to make black stories, just like Spike Lee, just like John Singleton. I was going to talk about the black experience, which to them meant stories about living in the hood, being poor, maybe dealing some drugs, getting shot at. Not things that I had grown up with, frankly, my family had not grown up with, and a lot of friends of mine who I talked to hadn't really grown up with. I lived in a mixed household. I went to my Latvian grandmother's house to have Christmas and sing Latvian songs. I went to my black grandmother's cookouts in July to eat barbecue and watch bad kung fu movies. It's a very different experience than what would actually sell in Hollywood during this time in the early 2000s. Didn't think that stories about my own personal identity would actually be something people wanted to watch. So my decision was to make not that. I made movies about people of other different cultures, except for mine, and this kind of left me in this no man's land of not being able to figure out who exactly I was as a filmmaker. I decided to make a film that was a little bit more personal to me, about my father's struggle with alcohol addiction. And when I was making this film, I had a choice. It was a story about a father and son. The son is trying to convince the father to go get treatment for his alcohol addiction. And I had a choice. I could make the entire cast white, which I felt at the time would be more acceptable to a general audience, or I could make the son mixed like me, which would be a truer representation of what the story actually was. But I was afraid that if I made the son mixed, that people wouldn't see the story about the father and son and the alcohol addiction. They would focus more so on the racial aspect, and everything I wanted to say would get lost. The choice that I made was to have an all-white cast, which I ended up regretting.
I'm retired. I can relax. If I want to take some photographs, I'll take some photographs. I want to work, I can do a little work. Maybe even I'll be visited by my son if he deigns to grace me with his presence. I want to quit, I'll quit. Okay? It's my business. It's up to me. It's my choice.
I'm very proud of the film. I'm proud of the actors and the performances, but it was kind of a failure. The movie got into no film festivals except for like one. We had like a small screening. I thought the movie was going to be the thing that launched my career, and instead it did absolutely nothing. And it's because I made the wrong choice. It was a very expensive way for me to exercise and talk about some personal demons, but it wasn't really helpful for anybody else. Looking back on it years later, it made me realize that I had been selfish in my filmmaking. I had gotten myself into a place where I only wanted to talk about things that were comfortable, things that didn't require me to take any risk. And that's not really helpful to anybody else. I made things that would satisfy my own ego, but that's not instrumental in making any kind of lasting change. Art does not live in a vacuum. Art is the way that we understand life, and they are lessons for humanity. The key part about humanity, that is people outside of ourselves. And by choosing not to talk anything about racial identity in control, I was keeping one part of myself hidden. Because if I exposed that part of myself, there was a chance that I would lose something, my own personal comfort. And in order to make art that changes anything, you have to be willing sometimes to get uncomfortable. I realized that I had to start taking chances. And so let's talk about some of the ways that I did it and how you can mirror the same. The first thing that I did and that I recommend other people do is to start writing about it, just for yourself. It doesn't have to be something that you put out there. If you feel comfortable putting it out there, by all means, go for it. But just start getting in the habit of writing about things that you aren't comfortable talking about to other people, and just get in the habit of doing that. And what you'll find is as you start writing about these things, you'll get more comfortable seeing it on a page, which is kind of like you're putting it out there anyway. And then you can take that next step into putting it out in public. Now, once you're comfortable putting it out in public, I recommend finding the right format to do so. My case was a blog. The Blended Future Project originally was a blog where I would share articles about what it was like to be mixed, growing up as a kid, living in a foreign country, all the things that I danced around talking about but never really dived into. And that began to not only boost my own confidence, but also introduce me to people who felt the same and had the same experience. Maybe the way that you're gonna do it is a blog, maybe you're just gonna post on social media. Find the format that you feel most comfortable with, and then start doing that. Something that is easy, you like, and is low risk. Start to get in the habit of talking about these things, building a community that becomes your audience, and you can just start building from there. I didn't want to talk about race or having a mixed identity because I thought it would put me into a box. What I didn't realize that I put myself into a box, one that I had to break out of. And in order to get out of it, I had to build something. And what I decided to build was this right here, the Blended Future Project. It became documentaries, some short films. As I started to build it, I realized that me not talking about race or identity, I was missing out on not only helping people, but also connecting with people. I had built a wall to my career that I had to disassemble in order to get through. I had the opportunity to help people understand what race really is, a control mechanism, a way to keep people divided and seeing the humanity in each other. And by doing this, I found not only a career, but also a rewarding purpose for all of the work that I do. Thanks for watching this video. Give it a like if you liked it. Don't forget to subscribe. Leave a comment down below. Let me know how I'm doing, and I'll see you next week.